Welcome to Beyond the Chutes is presented by Parasite Systems. We're your hosts today, Doug Simcox, my co-host, Mr. Sam Swearingen.
Hello, Doug. How are you?
I am good. Of course, Sam is a two-time North America Rodeo Commission champion saddle bronc rider. He is with us here, of course, sitting at the table. And BTC's on the road again, Sam. The bus is mobile.
Yeah, you're just on the road driving everywhere, Doug. And I'm following you.
It's quite the Tennessee tour. We are all the way in western Tennessee. We're sitting here at the Hinton City Park in Collierville, Tennessee. Of course, we got the bus, and we've got a super special guest with us today. We've had a great morning with him. Welcome to our show, if you would, Mr. Matt Harris.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It is great to have you with us, and when I got here, Matt rolled up on us. We got set up. We got generator running, air conditioner running, and ready to go. And we decided we were going to go eat lunch. And we went downtown. Of course, Matt showed us where he was living and where he grew up. We saw the square, which was packed today. It was, I think, the fair at the square in downtown Collierville.
Yep.
Tons of people, Matt. I mean, it was crazy.
I know. You didn't even get a chance to look at it.
I know.
It was crazy.
And that was in the area where your family had the restaurant, right? And we ate at a wonderful barbecue, Captain John's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I'd get a free something out of that.
you ought to, right?
Yeah.
If we talk about Captain John's, I mean, they should at least give us a soda or something when it's
probably
done.
get some napkins.
Yeah, you think so? Well, I don't know if you noticed, but I pinched one of their menus. I took it out with me.
Yeah, it's got a special meaning to it.
Yeah, tell us what that meaning is.
Well, back when my dad had the printing shop and the sign shop, he did a lot of logos for people around town, and Captain John's was one of the logos he did, and they're still using that logo to this day. I'm always proud to see it when I go in there.
Now, okay, that's all well and good, but
Yeah.
who is your dad, Matt?
Oh, Lecile Harris.
Lecile Harris.
Lecile Harris, that's my dad. Yep.
The legend.
The legend.
The legend.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And
So-
this is
Yeah, it's kind of tough growing up in that shadow, especially when I was at a rodeo or something. I could always get away with a lot. Well, he's Lecile's boy. I got the green light, brother.
so step us back, and I usually say step us back to growing up, earliest memories, and all that sort of thing. And I want to get to the earliest memories thing, but I want to back up maybe 2 generations.
Yeah.
Grandpa.
Right. Well, my dad's dad, we just called him Papaw, and his mother, we called her Mamaw. I guess that's a southern thing. But I know when he was growing up, his father got killed at an early age. I think he was about 6. They lived in a logging camp in northern Alabama, somewhere around Hamilton, Alabama, right in there. And he had walked out, the whole family walked out on the porch one morning, and these 2 loggers were in some sort of a fight amongst themselves, and one of them shot at another one, and he walked out on the porch and caught a bullet right in the head. So my grandfather's father, which would be my great-grandfather,
Oh, wow.
just died right there in front of him. Well, they didn't have the wherewithal and the money to take care of him, so he went to live with, I think, one of his kin. I can't remember exactly. Well, this was probably, Depression or pre-Depression.
Okay. Really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And they didn't have a lot of money to take care of what they had.
Yeah.
So he got treated pretty rough when he was a kid. But he was always good about making a dollar. And he worked in another logging camp as he got a little bit older. He was shoveling sawdust away from the mill. And one day, the guy that was running the saw didn't show up. And I think the foreman yelled, "Harris, you know how to run this saw?" Of course, he didn't. He said, "Yes, sir." So
Oh, my.
he stepped up.
Yeah.
So he ran the saw from there on. And then they moved from Alabama to Lake Cormorant, Mississippi, which was a little south of Memphis. And he had a grocery store there, and he sold groceries to some of the other stores in the area. And that's where my dad was born, in Lake Comrade. And I think in 43, somewhere around there, they moved from Lake Comrade to Collierville. So my dad was probably 6 years old when they moved. And my granddad got a job at the airport during the war. And he started out just a regular mechanic, and he worked his way up to a crew chief. He was very good mechanically. And I guess that's where I got my love for mechanical things, because Dad didn't like to work on cars at all. But my grandfather, man, I remember he had a Ford pickup truck with a 302 and a 3-speed on the column. And he would get that thing running so smooth with setting the points, setting the carburetor, adjusting the carburetor. He told me one time, he said, put your hand on the air cleaner. He said, can you feel any vibration? I said, no, sir.
Really?
And he said he had that thing running like a watch. Wow. So I think that's where I get all my motorhead tendencies from.
Yeah. And the stuff he was working on at the airport.
Oh, he was working on a lot of probably V12 or V16 big Allisons, and probably Rolls Royce, and stuff that was in fighter planes. And I think he worked on some old radial stuff that were in like B-17 bombers and stuff like that. He just amazing. My dad was a pretty accomplished sign painter, even in high school. And I remember one of the cars he had going to college, it was a 36 Chevrolet, 2-door sedan. And he had painted a bunch of cartoons all over it. So he started out at a pretty young age as far as lettering and artistic things. And I know when he was early in his rodeo career, I don't know why they call it, but if you pick up a little job of lettering something, they call it a snap.
Okay.
And he would carry a snap box, which was just like a little tackle box or a little toolbox with paint, thinner, brushes. And he would make extra money at some of these rodeos, maybe painting a guy's name on a door, or maybe a stock contractor painting the name of the company on a truck. So yeah, he carried his little snap box with him for quite a while, I guess until he got to where he didn't need to.
Yeah. Self-taught?
Self-taught. Yep.
And no stencils.
No stencils.
Everything freehand.
Freehand. What you would do, you would take a wax pencil and sort of draw the letter out so you get your spacing kind of right, but not just quickly. Just kind of a pattern to go through. And yeah, he was pretty good. As the business grew, of course, he had to start running the business and the business end of it. And I had to go with him a lot to put signs up on buildings and stuff. I remember one of the guys that used to work for my dad in the sign shop, he was a master sign painter, Joe Allen. And Joe only had one eye. Joe could do really well with type that was vertical, up and down, but like horizontal across, he would have trouble because that other eye helped stabilize it. So Joe, he would be kind of relegated to sitting at the easel and hammering out those hand lettered signs. But sometimes I would just stand there and watch him. It was just beautiful to watch the way he would form his letters, and it's art. It's a lot of skill.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question. Do you have any of those signs anywhere?
There are still some signs on the square that we didn't get to see because there were so many people.
Yeah.
He still got some signs on the square that he did. Later on, he got a lot into sandblasted signs. Sandblasted redwood, maybe with gold leaf or silver leaf or something like that. He was very creative, and a lot of his signs are still around.
But personally, do you have any hanging in the garage?
I've got one, and it's a shoot sign from a Harper Morgan Rodeo. And I had two, and I gave one to Scotty Lovelace because he and Scotty were pretty tight. And Scotty was the one that helped him start his own rodeo after the Mid-South Fair kind of went away. He started his own rodeo in South Haven, Mississippi. And now my daughter, Indy, is taken over it and done a wonderful job. Her and her husband, Cody Rhoda, and they've done a fantastic job. That is so much work, selling all the sponsors for the rodeo and keeping up with dirt going in the building. It's just so much. I really wouldn't want to do it, and Dad did it, and he didn't like doing it either. It was just so much work, but it's finally paid off. It's a nice, good rodeo now. Rory Lemmel has now since taken over Harper Morgan Rodeo, and Dad and Rory go back a long way, and so do I. And he's done a great job with it. And my daughter's just taking it and ran with it, just doing a fantastic job.
And I think that's something, I'd not heard of this before we sat down with you, Matt, that Lecile had started his own rodeo.
Yes.
In South Haven. South Haven, how far is that from here?
It's probably about 7 miles west. It's just south of Memphis on Interstate 55.
Okay.
It's almost right across the Tennessee-Mississippi line. Great venue, beautiful.
Indoor arena, sounds like.
Indoor, yep, nice arena.
And what year did that get started?
Oh gosh, I think that's been going on for about maybe 10 years.
10 years.
Maybe,
Okay.
something like that. But,
Okay.
you know, when you start a rodeo from scratch, it took a while for him to even, I mean, they lost money for quite a few years. And then I remember the year they broke even, they were just tickled to death. And now it's actually a profitable rodeo. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of my daughter and her husband, Cody, for working so hard at it, because I used to see Dad go through with it. He would say, "Do you want this rodeo when I'm gone?" I said, "Nope."
Yeah.
Wasn't any hesitation, was there?
No,
'Cause
not at all.
If the
Not
work
at all.
the work goes into a rodeo, it's a lot, but in a building, that's a whole nother aspect. It's just so mind-boggling the hoops you have to jump through.
Oh, well, like just bringing the dirt in. People don't have any idea. They just get there and show up and pay their ticket and sit down and go, "Wow, this is neat." The last time I was in here, it was a basketball court.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was a basketball court the night before, probably, or 2 nights before. And the night the rodeo ends, they'll start pulling dirt out that night, and by early morning the next morning, it's concrete. It's amazing. A lot of work.
And when is that rodeo?
That rodeo is in January.
Oh, it is.
Usually around second or third week in January. It depends kind of where things fall.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a great time because it's too cold to do anything outside. Now this year it was too cold. And we had ice and we were down money wise, but by the weather, I'm just glad we were just down a little bit. I didn't want to, we could have easily went into the red. It was tough.
Yeah. My goodness, so you've worked all aspects of the rodeo. We're going to get to that in a moment. You mentioned a chute sign. If I'm not mistaken, that's chute gate number 6?
I think it is. How'd you know that?
You showed me a picture of your Model A, and it was in the background. It said Harper Morgan on the very top. That caught my eye. So that's the original sign that Lecile, your father, painted.
He painted for the company that I worked for. It seemed like forever. That means a lot.
Yeah, I can only imagine. No, caught my eye, just so you know. Caught my eye. And that's what it's supposed to do,
Well,
right?
and that's what I was concerned with.
Yeah.
You want to have something, a legacy, and chute gate is what I'm looking for from Attica Rodeo, and
Okay.
haven't got one yet.
You haven't got one
they
yet.
took
The old wooden ones.
steel ones.
The old steel ones.
They put in new ones, and
Okay.
I'd love to have one, but don't know where I'd put it right now. So
Okay.
I guess I'm not worried.
Okay. Okay.
Make a barn door out of it or something.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'd put it on the front gate of a
Oh,
place to come into
that'd
right
be
in the middle
awesome.
or something somehow. I
That
don't-
would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
I love repurposing things like that anyway. Don't look at my shop.
Well, and I want to get to your shop, but I don't want to jump the gun here, so
Yeah.
to speak. Let's go back to we were talking about your grandpa working at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad get together a little bit, maybe share a little bit more. Your grandpa, he was selling groceries. That's when your dad was born.
Right, right. That reminded me of a story of my grandfather. When he was working at the airport, of course, that was back when I guess gas was pretty high. I think you could only buy gas on certain days, or you had a card or something like that. But anyway, he had a Harley Davidson, and he was riding it back and forth to the airport. And it was raining one night, and I don't know if you've ever been up a gravel driveway in the rain. You've got a little center part on either side of the two gullies that if you're riding a bicycle or a motorcycle, if you can ride that ridge, you don't get wet, you don't
Yeah.
get muddy.
Yeah.
Well, he was coming up the driveway on his motorcycle. It was pouring down rain, and he was riding that ridge, and front wheel slipped off of it, threw him in the water, and he got off of it and left it running in gear, and it was sitting there spinning in a circle, and that was the last time he rode it.
Oh,
And
really?
it sat there and spun in the circle till it ran out of gas.
Oh, wow.
So that's the kind of guy he was.
Okay. Okay. But never got on the bike again.
Now that was it.
Okay.
That was the end of that.
And the question I had when he was talking this story, he was in the sawmill running a saw that
Yeah.
he said he could do and
Yeah.
didn't have the knowledge at the time, but
Right.
took the wherewithal to take the chance.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and then he buys a grocery store. How do you go from a sawmill and have the money or the wherewithal to go to a grocery store?
Career change, we call that.
Well, the finances, unless it's so much different than today, but it
Well-
still had to cost money. You had to save up a lot from running the saw
still
to
during
do
the
that.
Depression or thereabouts, right?
Yeah, I think he had someone like a relative that was running that grocery store and probably got him the gig with, hey, you can go try to sell some groceries to this grocery store or something like that. So that probably got him in the front door. But my dad was actually born in that store, and that store is still there. It's still standing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I read your father's book. This ain't my first rodeo.
Hey,
And-
do you know, okay,
Okay.
I came up with that title.
Did you really?
Yes.
Okay. So is there some? Go ahead. Some
He-
backstory to that?
Well, not really. He was running names by me one day, and I don't know, it just wasn't clicking with me.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that just popped in my head.
Oh, wasn't him on his list?
No, it wasn't on his list.
Oh my goodness.
And I want credit for that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do
All
that.
these years later.
All the and
Credit where credit's due.
Yes,
Yeah,
most
yeah.
definitely. And what were some that he was flying by you? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I don't know. They didn't strike me as good at all. You know, didn't have the heart to go. Man, that's not any good. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's a neat bit of
Nobody knows, but
until now, you're going to be super famous because of this podcast. You just know
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
You just know that.
I want royalties off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I thought it was pretty cool,
that
pretty
is
catchy
cool.
title.
It's-
You've heard that your whole life.
Yeah, right.
Hey, this ain't my first road. Yeah.
No, that was very cool. And they talked about being born, I do believe, in the back room of that grocery store.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the name Lecile.
Okay. Do you know the story behind that?
A bit of it. Go ahead.
Well, when you're born, the doctor fills out your birth certificate, and Mama and Papa wanted him to be Cecil. So, I guess you know how doctors write, and I could see where an L or C, real sloppily, could be taken for an L.
Yeah.
So, whoever transposed it, they saw it as a L. So, that's what he was.
And always was called Lecile.
Yep.
You
Never
said?
went back to change it or anything like that.
No.
It's like, okay, well, this is what we're going to go with. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm glad they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not too many Licils.
I don't know that. Have you ever run into another?
Yes.
You did.
Yes. Boxcar Willie was named Lecile, and he talked to him about it, and he said that it was under the same circumstances.
Yeah.
That he was supposed to be Cecil, and it was misread as an L.
Oh my goodness.
And other than that, I've never heard another Lecile ever. I don't know if you knew Hadley Barrett very well, but he and Hadley was a great Hall of Fame announcer, and they worked. Dad and Hadley worked a lot together, and Hadley would always love to hear people butcher his name because they'd call him Lecile, Lecile,
Yeah.
Leslie,
Yeah.
One time, this guy called him Pencil. I don't know how he got pencil out of Lecile, but that just killed. I mean, Hadley would laugh so much, and he would call him Pencil a lot.
Okay.
That was his pet name for
He
Dad.
picked up on that.
Yeah.
And per the book, all these different names caused him sometimes, Lecile, caused him sometime to have to stand up for himself, defend himself.
I imagine, kind
He
of like the
enjoyed
boy
fighting.
named Sue.
Yeah, a boy named Sue.
Yep.
Sounds like he enjoyed fighting.
Oh man, he'd rather fight than eat.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Dad had some sort of, I don't know, it was like an adrenaline problem that was diagnosed later in his life, and it started to affect his heart. But the way it was explained to me is when you get that fight or flight,
Yeah.
your adrenaline starts to flow, and he had trouble turning it off. It would continue, I guess, to be, hey, I want to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very strong, quick, agile, just a great athlete, and long arms. He was a heck of a boxer, and he just loved to fight. He was, I don't know what you'd call it, but he was a badass
Yeah.
back
yeah.
in his day.
Yeah.
And I've heard some stories about maybe going into town where another rodeo was, and there was some guy thought he was bad.
Yeah.
And hey, they fought until they found out who was bad.
Really?
There
Okay.
was one story, he went somewhere in Louisiana, I think it was around Winsboro, and the same situation. I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was a guy named Buddy Heaton, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he was bad, just like Dad was, strong, and they fought to find out who was the toughest.
Yeah.
And I guess they did that a lot back in those days. I mean, I wouldn't do it.
I mean,
Bare knuckles, no, oh no.
Parking lot.
And they fought to a draw, and then they became friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they actually, one of his most prized awards that I've seen him get, he had won. He was made an honorary coon ass.
A what?
An honorary coon ass
Okay.
from I think it was a committee at Winsboro, Louisiana,
Mm.
and most of it had to do with he was just so tough.
Yeah.
It was, but he's really proud of that one.
So was he a trained boxer? He boxed.
He did box, and I don't know how much training he got, but he told me one time he was like Golden Gloves champion,
Okay.
and they went down somewhere in Memphis to fight one of the last fights that he had, and he was supposed to go up, or he did go up against a battalion champion Marine, and it was a heavyweight, and he said the guy wasn't very big, but he was kind of built like Mike Tyson, kind of like that.
Yeah.
And didn't have much of a reach, and Dad thought that he could take care of him because he could just stand away from him
Yeah.
and just knock his head off.
Yeah.
But the guy was left-handed, and that threw him off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he said he was doing pretty good, and he got kind of comfortable and a little bit cocky,
Yeah.
and maybe threw a roundhouse right and left himself wide open for that left hand. And he said next thing he knew, he was waking up back in the locker room.
Really? Knocked
and
him out.
knocked him out. He said that was the only time he'd ever been knocked out in the ring.
Okay. And when he fought, in the parking lots and stuff,
Yeah.
was he a boxer or was he?
Oh yeah.
I mean, he would take a boxing stance. He
Yeah.
would do that sort of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he had such long arms that he could stand away, and he had a really good jab, a lot of power behind it. I mean, when he was in college, I think he was 6'4", 220.
I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, and just solid as a rock.
And in college, he played football.
Uh-huh.
And in the book, they talk about all kinds of things happening on the offensive line, defensive line, hitting and dirty play. That
Well,
kind of fit him.
Yeah, oh yeah, he loved that. that was right up his alley.
Yeah.
So the fight or flight, I'm flying.
Well-
I'll tell you, that's me. I'm flying. I'm not much of a fighter.
And
'Cause
typically, somebody as tall as that, as slight as he was, they're runners,
Yeah.
right? So flight is right.
But you know, he really wasn't that fast,
No.
but he was pretty quick.
Okay.
And that's what you needed for fighting bulls.
yeah.
You need the quickness, side-to-side moves. And he said that it made him a better bullfighter because he was not really fast. He was kind of slow. And because he couldn't turn and run and do anything because the bull would run over him. So he had to turn back against the shoulder and get in there tight and make some good rounds. And sometimes he said he would be in there and couldn't find a way out. You just had to keep making rounds because if you peeled off,
He's going
he's
to
going to catch you.
Oh, my. Oh, my.
he was in the eye of the hurricane and had to stay there until he got
That's
up.
exactly right. It's a
Yeah.
good way of putting it.
And was fighting bulls similar to the street brawls, to the fighting in the parking
I think
lots?
so.
Was it?
I think so. He told me this story. I don't know if it's. I think it may be in the book. I'm not sure. About there was a bull called Speedy Gonzalez, and he was a notorious. I wish I knew who owned him, but he was notorious, just fast, really bad fighting bull. And I think he was at a rodeo in Little Rock. The bull was that company, and Dad got wind of it, and he and a friend drove all the way to Little Rock, and they did a thing called Money the Hard Way, and they would like put a rubber band around a $20 bill on a bull's horn, and just whoever wanted to try it could get it. And so he was going to try it, and he said that he was standing in front of the chutes, and he said the chute just cracked open. He said it didn't open all the way, and he said that bull squirted out, and he said before I knew it, I raised my arms up to keep the bull from breaking my arms
Yeah.
because he knew he was fixing to get run over. So anyway, he raised his arms up, and the bull hit him in the chest and broke a bunch of ribs.
Oh, wow.
And
wow.
yeah, they pulled him out of there, and I think the guy that he went with just poured him in the car and took him back to Memphis. But he was one of those that he's unfightable. I'll fight him and I'll beat him. It was
Okay.
just kind of his attitude.
Yeah. And self-taught as a bullfighter.
Yeah. When he first started, there's a little town northeast of here called Arlington, and they would have I think it was a weekly rodeo. He was still in high school, and he was interested in it because it's kind of an athletic deal, and I think he worked for a veterinarian, so he knew a little bit about cows. And he went over there and would pay his money and try to ride a bull. I guess it was just one of those things that they did. And he did it, and he said one time he rode the bull and said, okay, well, I'm going to win the world now.
Yeah.
Well, the next week he got thrown off. And he said he would go up there every week and he was watching the bullfighter, and he said, that looks pretty cool. I think I could do that. And sure enough, the bullfighter didn't show one week, and he asked my dad if he could do it. And he said, yeah. Just like my grandfather. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I do it all the time. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. And he did a pretty decent job.
Yeah.
So the guy told him, he said, look, next week, if you'll come back and do it again, I'll pay your entry fees
Yeah.
for the bull ride.
Yeah.
So he thought, oh man, this is going to be great. So he went and got, I think, some lipstick and some, he thought was like black makeup, but it was shoe polish.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and he put shoe polish on his face, and
Oh,
that
my.
didn't come off
No.
for like a long time. But that was pretty much the start of his career. And on the way over from Collierville to Arlington, there was a guy that had a farm over there, and he was huge, and he'd wear overalls, big old overalls. I don't know, I mean, just huge. And he was on his way over there, and he saw him sitting across they used to have gasoline tanks where they would put farm gas in it. It was laying over one of the gasoline tanks, thought it was a tent. And he pulled up and he asked the guy, he found out that it was a pair of overalls. He said, well, how much do you want for them? He said, son, you can have them. They're wore out. So there you go. Baggy pants, big overalls.
Was he the first? I mean,
I
was
think
that
so. I think that was the first.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I wish I could remember the guy's name, but
Yeah.
anyway.
So that was his first set of baggies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to be funny.
Yeah. And when he was in school, he was always trying to be funny, just knucklehead.
Yeah.
You know, I think he was like the original knucklehead.
Okay. Okay.
There's so many good stories about him at school, getting in trouble.
So a new definition of class clown.
A new definition of class
Very
clown.
much.
Yeah.
Very much so. There's some good stories in the book. If you haven't read it, I'd buy it.
You bet. No,
yeah, and I
definitely.
came up with the title too.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not going to read that book again. I think I've read it 3 or 4 times now. And now it's got a whole new meaning when I pick up that book. Anytime I introduce that book to anybody, right? Because on
Exactly.
podcasts, we'll talk about it.
Right.
And I'll say, just so you know, bit of trivia, just so you know, we're going to give a shout out to Matt Harris, who actually came up with the title of the book.
This is not my first rodeo.
This is not my first rodeo. Yeah. Well, actually, we should have Matt do it.
Yeah.
What exactly did it sound like when you said it? How would you like me to pronounce the title of that book, Matt?
Lecile Harris. This ain't my first rodeo.
Okay. Now that'll be we'll clip that. That'll be part of our show.
Yeah.
That'll be part of our show.
He said it much better than I did because I said, this is not, he said, this ain't my first
That's
rodeo.
right.
Yeah,
This
So,
ain't my first rodeo.
You got to put that southern
Yeah.
slang into
Okay.
it.
And that book won a lot of awards.
It really did.
It did. It did.
Yeah,
It's still
it's a
out
good
there.
one. I still pick it up every now and then. Actually, there's a copy of it at our high school.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I have an autograph copy of it.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Cool.
he had come up to Ford City, Pennsylvania to work it. And we sat in the van and he told me about the book. And man, I bought, 6, 8 copies, started handing it around to folks.
Yeah.
So bullfighter, back picking up your dad,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't enough just to be a bullfighter. That wasn't going to pay the way. Rodeo contractors needed more.
Exactly. Back then, you had to do both. You had to have an act of some sort and entertain the crowd, plus fight bulls. That's what you had to do to get a job. So he often, I'd heard him tell people a million times. He said, I learned how to fight bulls pretty quickly, but I'm still working on comedy. And he worked at it very hard. And all of his props were well made. He made most of them himself. And from that big robot to those oversized golf clubs, the oversized pistols he had, the big spurs. He was just, he understood what it took to convey whatever you're trying to do over to the audience. Everything had to be bigger than life and to show up. A lot of rodeo clowns now, they just do things a little too fast. I was talking to Dusty Myers the last time he worked at Dad's Rodeo, and he just said, do you have any little bit of advice? And I just said, yeah, just slow down a little bit. Just slow down. And I noticed the next night he did. He delivered his lines a little bit slower, and I just see how much better that felt.
Yeah, yeah.
And the crowd could actually get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And your dad in the book talked a lot about timing.
oh yeah, yeah. He always said that timing isn't everything; it's the only thing. And I think his background in music maybe had something to do with timing, because, I mean, timing in music is it's everything. That's what it's all about. But he was a drummer, and he is one of the most famous. The announcer he really liked to work with back before he ran into some of the others was an announcer by the name of Phil Gardenhire.
Yep.
And Phil was a drummer too. And I don't know if that clicked some kind of way, that the timing part of them it was impeccable. It was amazing, fun to watch.
And I've heard stories when he was with Longhorn Rodeo.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I'd like you to share a little bit about Longhorn. But the story I heard was he would jump up. They had a live band.
Yep.
And he would jump up and he'd play the drums.
Yep.
With that live band, that live orchestra right at the rodeo arena.
Yeah. Usually after the last bull rider, and he probably did his dance with the bull, he would go up as they were playing their closing number and just sit in with them and hold his own. I got to watch the whole IRA, RCA turn into IPRA, PRCA thing. And I heard Dad talk about it when it was going on, and he thought that it was pretty ridiculous. And he took offense to a lot of times when he was in the IRA that people in the RCA would look down on him and call the whole association amateur. If you're not working an RCA rodeo, you're working an amateur rodeo. Yeah. And I got a chance to see some of the Longhorn rodeos, and that was about as far from amateur as you could ever get.
You bet.
And Dad was making more money than a lot of the major RCA clowns. So in my book, if you're getting paid, that's not amateur.
Right.
That's professional.
Yep.
And I don't know, I just thought it was kind of goofy and cheap the way they thought. They used to run the IRA down. Yeah. But now it's not, maybe it's not so bad anymore.
Yeah, it has gotten a lot better since it's opened up where you can cross over and go to both associations. And it was way too long coming, but and I've noticed the good contestants back even a long time ago. If they were good, they respected what you did, and you respected them. It's the ones that really didn't go anywhere in their backyard that thought, okay, we're the best there is.
Right, right.
And it has gotten a lot better. And
well, that's good. That's good, because I thought it was just kind of a little cheap shot.
Yeah, and we still hear that today.
Yeah.
We do. We hear that today. Pro rodeo versus the amateurs. You know?
Yeah, that used to burn him up. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
Good. That's good to hear. And I know he was, because we're big supporters and promoters of the IPRA, once known as the IRA, of course.
Right.
And he was a president of the IRA for several years.
Yes, quite a few years.
What did he think of that?
He tried to get the business end of the IRA, get them more money. He actually tried to get them insurance and things of that nature. He was way ahead of the curve as far as that kind of stuff, because he was trying to raise a family just like everybody. And what he wanted to do, and he tried to do, was get sponsorship involved, more sponsorship involved with rodeo. And I remember he took several things to the board about, one of them was insurance. And one of the stipulations were you had to have this insurance company on your shirt.
Okay.
And they said, we're not wearing no daggum uniforms. We're cowboys. I know that got to him, because I could see him at home talking about it. He would try something like that. And he even tried to get like matches between the IRA and the RCA, and you had to wear team shirts because it was like the IRA against the RCA, and they wouldn't go for it because I guess some of them wanted to keep it traditional. Whatever.
The IRA had nothing to lose. The PRCA did, and I understand their point. But taking it back to the NFL and the AFL,
Right.
when they did that, that made football.
Yeah.
It made football.
It did.
The Super Bowl came about. It made football.
Yeah.
And it could have been the same
Yeah.
if they had joined forces or whatever. Who knows?
You bet.
Who knows? But it's in the past.
It's in
Yeah.
the past.
Well, he told me a story one time. He said that he was always trying to better the association, get the Cowboys more money and this and that. And he was talking to someone, I think with ABC, and they were looking for something for during the week because Saturday and Sunday they were full of all kinds of sports, and they were looking for something new that they could put on in the middle of the week. And Dad said, well, maybe we can get rodeo and have, I think that's where he came up with the team concept kind of thing.
Okay.
And there again, he took it to his board and pretty much the same thing. We're not going to wear uniforms.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
going to do that. And then they picked football, and well, you see where that went.
Absolutely.
Monday night.
And to your point, this would have been early 70s.
Yeah.
And it's about 10 years ahead of the curve because we had Mike Fletcher on here, and he talked about riding for the Tulsa Twisters, the rodeo team,
Mm-hmm.
right? And back in Philadelphia and Atlanta, Sam, Team Rodeo.
Yeah. And so much of this was before its time, and now it's coming back.
Yeah.
And now I think they have the finances and the
Mhm.
people in the right places to make it fly. And
Right.
I think it should bring rodeo to a whole new level.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Me too, because you so much want to see these visions that the people had
Yeah.
and go mainstream.
Right.
And I got a theory, and maybe I'm crazy, but with associations, you have the contestants piloting the plane. And you think about, as a person, it's me today, what can help me now?
Right.
Not what can help 10 years from now,
Yeah.
because it's your vested interest.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the difference between the PBR and the PRCA and the IPRA.
Right.
The PBR is a for-profit entity,
Mhm.
and they can make decisions today that will help them
Mhm.
or hurt them.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But at least they can make a decision.
Yep.
So I'm so looking forward to where the future of this is going. And when you look back, and I never knew this about Lecile, of where when he was president, it was before my time.
Yeah.
But where he was trying to take the ship, it's incredible to hear this.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
He would come home. He would be really frustrated, and hopefully, it will come to fruition, and maybe one of his dreams will come true.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, along around this time, he's president of the IPRA. Of course, he's running his businesses,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you got the sign shop, you got the printing shop.
Yeah. We had an answering service. Yeah. He bought an old. I don't know if you remember Laugh-In, where the woman would be standing in front of. Well, it was the same kind of old. I don't know where he got it, but you had a plug on a wire, and you picked it up and you stuck it in a hole.
Okay.
And answered.
Yeah, like a switchboard.
It was a switchboard.
Okay.
Exactly. It was
Okay.
a switchboard.
Okay.
And,
And,
Sarah ran it.
That. Yeah. One ringy dingy.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Well, same kind of thing. And so we had the switchboard going. Oh, and he had a tanning salon too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
That was in the building, and the lady that Trudy Robertson, she was great. She was our answering service person, and she would run the tanning salon too. He had a lot of irons in the fire for sure.
And did these deals come to him? Opportunities come to him? Was he always just looking?
He was always just looking.
Yeah.
He was just,
Definitely an entrepreneur.
yeah,
Willing to take a risk.
yeah,
Yeah, but he wanted to make money.
exactly.
Okay.
And I guess he was trying to take that same attitude to rodeo, because he wanted to rodeo so bad, but he had to do all these other things on the side just to get where he wanted to go. So,
and so Longhorn, at the time, early 70s, right, kind of the heyday of it, when it was really moving away from Loretta Lynn
right.
to Longhorn. He wrote in the book that he'd do upwards of 70 performances a year for Longhorn Rodeo.
Right.
And you said it paid better.
Yes, paid. I don't know what those other guys were making in the RCA, but he was banking.
Okay.
You know, he was doing really well.
Yeah.
And gosh, I'm trying to think of that guy's name that used to. It was a one-man band. George Runquist. I was trying to think of his name the other day.
Yeah.
Going to one of those rodeos was just such a treat, because everything was just so snappy, and paint was nice, and the music was great. The spotlights were great. Everything, the arena looked good. Banners were nice. It was just, and Ken Knopp, I don't know if you remember Ken, but he was one of Bruce's proteges, I guess what you call him. And he learned a lot. He actually went to one of, I think, Bruce Lurkey, one of his schools.
Oh, sure.
And that's where he got, I guess, started in the business that he was in, as far as PR work for Harper Morgan. Yeah, Ken's a great guy. He goes back to the old Longhorn days, too.
Yeah. And yesterday we sat with Jerry Bellis.
Oh, yeah, Jerry. He was the announcer big time. He's such a great voice. And Jeannie, Jerry's wife, I just love them to death. They're like family.
And he told us he worked 17 years with Lecile.
Yeah, I could imagine. Gosh, he's probably got better stories than I've got.
He did have one about the piano act, which was my all-time favorite act in rodeo I've ever seen in my life. Because I was a 13-year-old kid the first time I seen it.
Yeah.
And it just blew me away. It just blew me away.
Yeah.
So
actually, the piano act was probably one of the reasons that I started going as hard as I did. He just went to the RCA and was trying to, it was almost like starting over.
Yeah.
Had to make a name for himself. And he was at a very prestigious rodeo. I think it was Pikes Peak in Colorado Springs. And that's where the Hall of Fame is. That's where the PRCA headquarters is. If you wanted to do that rodeo and make a good impression, that'd be the best one to do. I remember Mom had gone with him. She hardly ever went. But he was going to take his best act, the piano act. And he didn't have anybody to work the girl part. So he had to just kind of find someone. And the guy just wasn't cutting it. And I remember Mom calling me on the phone, and she said, "Matt, you need to come up here." She said, "Your dad needs you."
Yeah.
And I had done it a few times around here, but this is like flying to Colorado. That's a whole new thing for me.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So we go up there, and I pick it up the next night and just slay it.
Yeah.
Because I knew the music, I knew everything. I knew where to put your hands on the guitar to look like I was playing, shifting chords and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think from then on, it was just kind of, well, you're going to go with me, and we're going to tackle the world.
Okay. And that was one of the first times you had already worked the act a bit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But around close where I didn't have to be gone very long.
Right.
And I have to my whole career has been really, the rodeo career has been really tough for my wife, and I have to just give her a big shout out, because man, putting up with somebody being on the road that long, a normal woman wouldn't have put up with it.
So let's talk a little bit about Miss Ethel. When did her and Lecile meet?
Dad was still in high school, and I think she and a friend went to a ball game, maybe a basketball game, and Dad spotted her in the crowd. She went to school at Bartlett, which is North Memphis, and she lived around in that area. And I think it was just, she was, the pictures that I've seen of her when she was young, I mean, it was, man, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think it just, he was smitten. And I think he asked her out, and she said, well, I'm going with someone, and he got her address. And I think he went over there, if I'm not mistaken, and he was there. And I think he just ran him off.
Your dad did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty much just said, hey, I'm staking claim here. And
New guy in town.
it's 6'4", 215 or 220.
Scrappy.
Scrappy would, yeah, fight at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Fight or flight.
Yeah. So I think that's just what happened.
I'll be darned. And she didn't travel. Was she traveling a bit?
No, she never, well, she had kids at home. We were
Okay.
at home. Dad was probably rodeoing some, but he was playing, he had a band, a good band, traveling, making money. And he was on the road the night or the morning I was born. He was in Little Rock.
Playing a gig.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as we get into his music, he and the band had been asked to back up a truck driver out of Memphis or something
Yeah,
like
some
that.
sleazy looking,
Make
greasy
it.
haired dude.
Yeah.
No. Slick clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, nah, he's not going to make it. I'm not going to waste my time going on the road with that guy. Of course, back then he was blue jeans, t-shirt, flat top. Nah, he wasn't about to go with that guy.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know who that guy is because I
Oh.
haven't read the book.
Truck driver out of Memphis.
Yeah. Yeah, Sam Phillips was the one that asked him about it. He was trying to get a road band together to do a few gigs for him because he thought he might have had a little potential. Yep.
And then like a year later or so, they're sitting in a diner somewhere, and as the story goes,
Yep.
look up and there's on the black and white TV, there he is.
Yeah.
What
So,
was his name? by the
hey,
way?
Liesel, isn't that greasy-haired kid you said it wasn't going anywhere? I think it was the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah,
or
I think it was
something.
Ed Sullivan Show. And if you remember, there was one dancer, one singer on the Ed Sullivan Show that they could only show from the waist up, I do believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it was Elvis.
It was Elvis.
Oh,
Yep.
my goodness.
Yeah.
But you make your decision based on the information you got at hand, right?
Yep, exactly. Well, I think his bass player decided to go with him.
Did he?
Yeah, and maybe the saxophone player, but I think the bass player did.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, years on, he looks back and says, "I think I made the right decision because look what happened to Elvis, and that could have happened to me." And I don't know. It just rodeo's a lot more wholesome entertainment than rock and roll, I suppose.
Yeah, that was the beginning of it all.
Yep. Probably wouldn't lived quite as long.
Yeah. And the hillbilly version of, oh gosh, what was it? Laugh-In was, of course, Hee Haw.
Right.
And
Right.
talk a little bit about how Hee Haw found him.
They were working, well, Longhorn and Loretta were pretty much centered in Nashville. And the word got around to, I think it was Sam Lavella, the guy that was producing and putting Hee Haw together. You might want to go check this guy out, this rodeo clown. He's pretty funny. So he did, and he actually got to be, it was like 5 seasons or maybe even more than that. And he and his partner, Jimmy Moore, got to do what they call undercranked comedy, more or less. It was some of the things were sped up
Yeah.
to look like old-timey footage.
Okay.
And he said it started out, they would just, him and Jimmy and the cameraman would go out on locations, and he knew where all the old cool barns were, and they would go out and film some sort of stuff. Well, as it went on, it got more popular, and that segment got to be popular. And next thing you know, he said, well, the Hee Haw Honeys wanted to go along. And then the next thing you know, well, everybody wanted to go. Everybody wanted to be a piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said it wasn't fun anymore. It was too much Hollywood. He said
Yeah.
he really enjoyed it when it was just he and Jimmy, and they would go out and do some stuff. Some of the stuff was really funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember watching Hee Haw to see if I was going to see Dad tonight.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
And he was on most shows?
He was on, man, I would say he was probably on maybe 80, 90% of them.
Okay.
He would have a clip.
Okay. And who was Jimmy Moore, and how did he meet Jimmy Moore?
I don't know that much about Jimmy. He must have met him around Nashville somewhere. Him and a guy named Hank Cochran.
Oh, yeah, singer.
Yeah. Dad was pretty close to Hank, and he probably had connections, and that's kind of how that all worked out.
And there was, I don't know, maybe a month ago, Matt, up on Facebook, and I don't know who posted it, but it was a video of your dad, hee-haw clip, sitting on a front porch somewhere, talking to somebody on how to use a phone or something like that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And what was it? Maybe 4 or 5 minutes total, and just goofy and funny, and laughed. It wasn't no big punchline. You just laughed all the way through it.
Right. That reminds me of a lot of his acts. He told me one time when he was building an act, he would start with the end and then go to the beginning and then fill the rest in. That's how he would do it. He would like start with, here's the beginning, here's the end. And I remember, I don't know if you ever saw the car act he had, but he got that idea off of watching Laurel and Hardy. They did a short one time where they were in a Model T and it got squished between like trolley cars, and the trolley cars pulled away, and there they were, kind of up in that A-frame looking.
Yeah.
And then Stanley puts his arm out to signal for a left-hand turn, and the car goes around in circles. It's just hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's where he got that one little idea.
Yeah.
And then he built the rest of it out of it.
Okay. And who built the car?
Jackie Robinson.
Because that was some mechanical engineering is what that was.
Yes. And Dad was thinking a hydraulic ram and all this stuff and trying to figure out how to do this. And, well, if you do that, you'd have to have a hydraulic tank and a pump. And Jackie was a good friend of ours. And Jackie was, he was kind of a race car guy, just a gearhead, just like me.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why don't you just put a winch on it and just pull it together? And, well, gosh, that's simple.
Hinge it in the middle.
Yeah, hinge it in the middle. And finally, Dad just sent him, like, the body. And actually, I think he just sent him the fiberglass body. And Jackie built the car just by what Dad was talking about.
Okay.
And, of course, it wasn't painted, and there was a lot of things that Dad did to it to finish it off. But Jackie's the one that figured it out and built it. I'll never forget. We drove over there one winter to pick it up, and it was cold, and Jackie was showing us how it worked, and he said, well, take it down the road. So, I mean, I just thought it was just like a regular car, so I'd take off. I get up to about like 20, 25, and it's getting squirrely. The steering's nothing. It wasn't built to go that fast.
Yeah.
So I had to shut it down real quick. Yeah, I've got quite a few miles on that old car.
So he had that whole act sketched out before he built it.
Yes.
Started at the end, as
Yes.
you said. Then finished, then said, okay, how are we going to open this deal?
How are we going to get to this point?
Yeah, and then built the middle out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Always had acts in the works?
Yes. I remember one time he was talking about, at Longhorn, he had to come up with an act every year, something different.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Yeah, every year.
Every year.
So he learned how to build them. I mean, you had to have some sort of formula to come up with that much. And I remember one time he said, I got kind of cocky, one great act after another.
And they all worked?
And they all worked.
Okay.
But I remember him like sweating the first. He'd put it together like all winter or whatever. And I remember him sweating that first trip, and then he'd come home and tweak on it a little bit. But I remember he was getting kind of cocky about how good he could do an act. He could make an act out of anything. And that was when, I don't know if you remember, when Bobby Jean King and what was that guy's name?
Oh,
tennis players. Yeah.
It's
Bobby Jean
amazing.
King.
You remember the woman. but
Yeah.
you
I
don't
can't
remember the
remember the
man.
guy.
Billy.
No.
Billie Jean King, not
That- no,
Bobby.
Bobby-
yeah, Billie Jean
Bobby-
King was a woman.
Yeah.
And then
Bobby something.
Oh my. Oh my.
I know.
That's terrible.
I know.
Yeah, but
Riggs?
you remember the woman?
I know.
Riggs?
Not Riggs.
Bobby Riggs.
Bobby Riggs?
I think you're right.
Can you
I
Google
think so.
that, Sam?
I think
Can
you're
you
right.
just
No,
Google
I
that?
can't
You
Google
that?
He thought, man, give me anything
Yeah.
and I'll make an act out of it.
Yeah.
Well, so he got kind of cocky and he was going to build this act with Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King.
It is
Okay.
Bobby Riggs.
It is Bobby
So-
Riggs. Okay.
He got a couple tennis rackets and just got a little too cocky and said, well, we're just kind of going to play it by ear. And it bombed big
Bombed.
time.
Bombed.
Big bomb.
Okay. Okay.
So that put him back in his place. And
Yeah.
I think he learned a lesson. Be more prepared.
Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
through and don't just rely on off the cuff stuff like that.
Well, if you look at these acts, and there's so many, the baseball game,
Right.
the robot act,
Right.
and I do want to talk about the robot act when the young man comes flying out into the arena, and I think jumped on top of you.
Yeah. It was in Vernal, Utah.
Yeah.
My wife, we used to plan. Dad used to, like, once a year, we'd maybe make a Western run and try to get 4 or 5 rodeos to make it worth your while going out there. And a lot of times I would try to get my family to go out there with me. So they were actually there that night. And I go out there, we're doing the same thing, and all of a sudden I just feel this heavy weight on the
Had
back.
no idea what
Had
was
no,
going
no idea. I had a little area to look out about his. It was a speaker grill, is what it was,
Okay.
and I had that to look out of, and I just felt something heavy on me, and just knocked me to the ground. Kind of, it wasn't very violent, but I thought, well, maybe a horse had gone out
Oh,
and
yeah.
just kind of brushed up against
Yeah.
me. So I go down face first. I can't see anything, can't get up, and I hear the crowd and all this stuff going on, and I had
No idea what's
no,
going on.
No, what was happening?
Yeah.
But I can't remember that guy's name. It was a bullfighter there. Anyway, he
Caught him by his foot.
Caught him. Yes, he was so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dad threw the saxophone at him.
Yes.
And man, I wish that would have hit him. That would have been awesome. But it came pretty close.
All in the middle of an act.
In the middle of an act, yeah. And gosh, I'm trying to think of who. I think it was Randy Corley
Was it?
announcing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just rolled with it.
Oh yeah,
Just part of the deal.
yeah. And well, guy's name was Maxwell or Max something or another.
The bullfighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he catches him by the foot. I mean, I see all this on the replay later because
Okay.
I'm like a turtle on my back.
can't get up.
I can't get up.
Okay.
I'm just hearing all this commotion going on. So he grabs him, pulls him in the arena, and Dad goes to hammering on him, man.
On the ground.
Oh,
They're wrestling around a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, Dad's getting some
Oh,
licks
yeah,
in on
you
his.
could see
I
it,
could see. He turns. I remember one time he grabbed him by the hair and turned his face so he could get a good head-on shot of him. Like boom, boom.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to be part of my act? Hey, we're playing tomorrow night. Why don't
Yeah.
you come back?
Yeah, you're gonna make the internet, buddy. The internet's not even made yet.
That's what started it.
Oh, but there's video up there, dude. I mean, it is something to watch.
And I often wanted to go talk because they put him in jail.
Did they?
Yeah, I mean, he probably just sat there until he sobered up or whatever.
Young guy,
Oh
right?
yeah, just acting stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey, y'all watch this. This is
Yeah,
gonna be great.
Yeah.
Not that we all haven't done
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like
No,
that.
no.
Okay.
But I just wanted to go the next day and just go, man, what did you do that for? What are
Yeah.
you thinking?
Well, they dared me.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I don't know, might have had a little too much to drink.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you talk about these acts, and the robot act you talked about, camera act, piano act, the water bucket, Mr. Friggins,
Oh yeah.
right? And
Oh,
the story goes,
Okay.
somebody found a bass fiddle.
Yes. Lauderdale, Mississippi. We used to go there twice a year for Ralph Morgan's biennial rodeo. It's just east of Meridian on 45. Just a little bitty arena. And man, it's like the biggest little rodeo you've ever seen. It's crazy good. So, what were we talking about?
The
Mr.
bass
Friggins.
fiddle.
Mr. Friggins, that's right. That's right. Okay. So, Mr. Ralph Morgan, it was the other half of Harper and Morgan.
Oh.
The other one was James Harper.
Okay.
So, that was Mr. Ralph's personal property ranch rodeo. His wife, Miss Elizabeth Morgan, and we'd call her Miss Lib for short for Elizabeth. And she was taking some garbage to the dump one day, and she saw this old bass fiddle at the dump.
Yep.
So she grabs it, puts it in the back of her truck, and says, I bet Lecile can make an act out of this.
Okay. Okay.
Dang sure did.
So was that kind of a, speaking of dares, was he dared? I dare you to make an act out of this?
I think
found
so.
this.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
You think you're so good here. But that turned out to be a great act, and I loved it. I loved doing it. And I've got such a extensive music background that I knew where to put my fingers. I knew when to pull the bow across.
Yeah.
I just knew how it worked.
Yeah.
And I remember we would do like an act a year, and we did that all year one time. So I'd be standing in the alley waiting for the event to go over, so we would come in, and I forgot where we were, but we had this, it was a band there, and he had a fiddle player. And I said, how do you tune a fiddle? What are the notes?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he gave them to me. So from then on, I'd be in the alley, I'd tune that fiddle perfectly. Didn't know how to play it.
Okay.
Couldn't play it.
Okay.
But it was in tune.
But
by
you're
God.
getting into the role.
I was so into it. I was so into it.
And when we talk about these acts, and they're out there on YouTube, several of these. It wasn't just the props. It wasn't just the music you had to think of. How does this all fit together? It wasn't just the script.
Yeah.
It was, here's your role.
Yes.
This is where you need to be placed. This is when you need to do specific things, all coming back around that perfect timing.
Yep. When you were saying that, it brought something funny. There was an act that he did. It was Bobo the Funky Monkey. All right, so I had to dress up in a monkey ape costume. That was one of probably the most physically demanding acts we ever did, because I had to bend over like a monkey for the whole time. And I played a trombone, and I actually did play a trombone in the band at school, so I knew how to work it and everything. And his part was a saxophone. So he played the sax, and I played the trombone. And we were talking one night about how hard we try to make it look like we're actually doing what we're doing. He said, every time I pick up that saxophone and start to play, if you've ever seen a person that plays the saxophone, they'll pick it up and they'll put it in their mouth and wet the reed before they start.
Yes.
Just stick it in there and
you bet.
Stick it in your mouth and wet it.
Yep.
He said, I don't care if it fell in a pile of crap or how much dirt was on it. I was going to wet that reed regardless.
Because that was the role.
Because that was the role.
Yeah.
I just thought that was amazing.
Yeah. And all these great acts and all the players, it wasn't just you and he on the floor in the arena that had to get their stuff together.
Oh, yeah.
Your announcer had to be in the right place
Yep.
at the right time.
Right.
Your music had to be in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
And one that really comes to mind when we talk about that is the gunfight.
Yep.
And the big spurs.
Yep. Yep. I was the first one to do the spur sound effect when we were with Harper Morgan, because Rudy Burns would play the other part, and I would play the other part later when Rudy wasn't there. And you had to get those. You better get those spurs right. He was so particular about his acts, about everything, about how the announcer did this, how, just like you were saying, it had to be perfect, on spot. And he would get so mad because, a lot of those people, other bullfighters or maybe contestants, they would mess with other people's acts.
Okay.
And thought it was funny.
Yeah.
They didn't mess with Dad's.
Okay.
Because he meant business.
Yeah.
And he would crawl on them Oh man, I'll never forget. Just one time we were doing the golf act, and I was, of course, up in the stands selling popcorn. That's a story in itself. We had a popcorn tray with popcorn boxes, and just to cut down on the popcorn use, we would stuff maybe a piece of styrofoam in the popcorn box. So all you'd have to do is just put some on the top to make it look.
Yeah.
But when he hit it, it had to be enough to make it visual and look good.
Yeah.
So I would have to work my way up around, have like a little popcorn hat or whatever, and I'd be holding the popcorn. And people would come up and ask me, "Hey man, how much is popcorn?" And I'd say, finally, I just got to make a joke. I would just, the first thing that would pop in my head.
Yeah.
Well, this is a special popcorn we're trying out. We're using like rat urine to give it more color.
Yeah.
And it never would phase
color.
them. Yeah. How much? And sometimes I would actually take their money.
Oh, and give them a popcorn?
No, because it wouldn't come out of the box. It was stuck.
Okay.
Because that was, if he knocks it out of your hand.
Yeah.
If you had to go round up all those popcorn boxes
that makes
every
sense.
time, so they were taped to the bottom so it would all go together.
More thinking ahead. This is how you develop an act.
Yeah, right. So I would be like giving the guys money and stuff like that, and finally I would notice him and turn around.
Yeah.
So I'd give the guy back his money.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember where it was. I think it was Jackson. So I'm standing there outside kind of the tunnel way there and just waiting to go in. And this guy comes around the corner, and this woman meets him right there, right where I'm standing.
Yeah.
And she says, "Where have you been?"
Yeah.
She said, "Well," he said, "Well, honey, the line is so long." He had drinks and stuff, candy bars. And she looks at it and says, "After all this time, you forgot the popcorn."
Oh.
And he looks at me like, "Man, I am so glad you're standing here."
Yeah.
So I've got to turn around and tell him, "I can't sell you this popcorn."
Yeah.
And I broke his heart.
Oh.
It probably caused a divorce.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I just wanted to give him some money and just say, "Look, man,
There's heavy cost to being an entertainer, Matt. Stuff
man.
you had to do.
I know.
Oh, my goodness. So you referenced your musical background.
right."
And we're going to come back to one point that you made here in a little bit, so I don't lose track of it. But what's your earliest memories growing up? We talked about your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your grandma, your great-grandfather. What's your earliest memories?
Well, I don't know if you you know what bulldogging is?
Sure,
Steer wrestling.
sure.
All right. Bulldoggers and probably hazers too have what they call a dog and bat. It's a wooden dowel, usually wrapped in leather, with kind of like a flap on the end that looks sort of like a beaver tail. And then the other end's got a loop on it. You put it over your wrist so it doesn't fall off. Well, that's what we got disciplined with,
Dog and bat.
a dog and bat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very vivid memory. But to his benefit, the big flap made more noise than
Right.
it hurt.
Right.
That
Yeah.
was the reasoning behind the big flap.
I see.
It would scare a horse like, I'm getting the crap beat out of me, but you're
Right.
really not.
Right.
It just sounds bad.
Yeah.
So
Did you ever mention it seemed louder pop than it actually hurt?
no,
Never
no,
brought that
I never
up?
brought that up. And it's funny, my brother, we did something. It was time to get a whipping, and he'd just say, "Go get the dog and bat," and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
It wasn't in its normal place, and that was a place that it stayed. And I think my brother did away with it.
He did.
Yeah, I think he did. He never confessed, but I'm pretty sure it's buried somewhere.
Now, did that make it worse?
Yeah.
Because I know it would have at my house.
Yeah, it
You
did.
know. And
Idiot. We had a good thing going. You know,
Right,
it didn't feel. It wasn't that bad. You know,
Yeah.
it just sounded bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot what.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
But and that was the era where they took kids and straightened them out.
Oh yeah.
The worst is when you get it and you don't know what it's for.
You don't even know what it's for.
I don't know what it's for, but it damn sure
Could
hurt.
be a handful of things at that point.
You better add them up,
You
huh?
better add them up.
My dad called those tune-ups.
Tune-ups. Yep. So, grew up on a ranch
Yeah.
outside Collierville.
All right, let me tell you something real quick.
All
before
right.
all
Okay.
right, we were out at the ranch,
Yeah.
and I wanted a Super Ball.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you remember the
Yeah,
Super Ball
sure,
when they first
certainly.
came out? They
You
just
bet.
really compressed rubber.
You bet.
And my brother and I went out on the back patio. It was concrete. So we had just bought it. And we go out there and I said, okay, we're about to see what this, if it's our money, got our money's worth or whatever. And I'm fixing to bounce it, and I look up and there's an airplane way up in the sky.
Yeah, yeah.
So hold up a minute. I don't want to get in trouble with
Working on the act.
Yes. I don't want to get in trouble with it. So we let the airplane pass. So I rear back, man. Kaboom! Hit the concrete. Bounced up. I watched it go over in the field. Boom. Never found it.
Never found it again.
One bounce.
One bounce.
One bounce.
The one bounce wonder.
And I had a similar thing. You remember Mechanics Illustrated?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Well, in the back, you could buy the little sea monkeys and the X-ray glasses.
Exactly.
All the cool stuff.
That's right.
Well, they had this. It was a weather balloon. I mean, it looked as big as a house compared to the guy standing next to it.
Yeah.
Well, I had to have that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long it took me cutting yards or whatever to get up enough money to buy it. So I get Mom to send it off, and then I had to wait for Lord knows how long for the package to come.
Yeah.
So this was a several-month ordeal, maybe
Right.
the whole summer.
Right.
So it finally comes in the mail. Well, my grandmother had an old vacuum cleaner where you could reverse it and it would blow as well as suck. So I'm over at her house, hook it up, blow it up, and it's starting to get about maybe kind of large beach ball size, and I'm kind of feeling it. Man, the thing is getting tight. I better wait. Just let it kind of stretch out a little bit. Just kind of let it relax.
Because it's not as big as a house.
No, it's not as big as a house, but I'm gonna get there.
Yeah, that
but I
makes
gotta
sense.
just take my time.
Give it time.
So, anyway, I keep pumping on it a little bit. It's pretty good beach ball size, maybe just a little bit bigger. So, I'm going. That's okay for right now. I'm gonna come back to it later. So, I tied a little knot in the end of it. Pick it up, throw it in the grass. Poof.
No.
Popped.
One shot.
One shot.
Oh, my.
One stinking shot.
Yeah.
Man.
Is this what they made the movie The Christmas Story out of?
It might be.
I feel like it.
You know, he waited so long and for the clue and all that, and it said, "Eat your Ovaltine."
Yeah, exactly. That's the same way I felt.
Yeah.
I remember one year I was wanting a bicycle real bad, and I don't know where Dad got this bicycle. Probably bought it from some guy at a rodeo. That's how a lot of our toys came back in the horse trailer.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
But it was a little bit too big for me. It was a big bike. One of cruiser bikes with the fat tires. Looked good, but it was just too big for me.
He got it cheap.
Yeah, he got it cheap. And, son, this is too big for you. No, it's not, because I knew if he got rid of it, it'd be another 10 years before I got another bike. So I finally talked him into letting me keep it. First trip down the driveway, I tried to stop. I couldn't reverse it enough to get the brake to come on.
Yeah.
Plowed into the back of the station wagon.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I got wrecked my bike and then got a whipping for hitting the station wagon.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Should have took the ditch.
I know.
Oh, my.
I know.
So when did you get started with music? You said you had quite an extensive musical background.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so talk a little bit about that.
Well, Dad always had a set of drums set up in the house because that's what he did. And as soon as I could get and reach the pedal, that's where I was. And he taught us both how to play. And my mother, poor soul, he'd always have a good stereo, and it was loud. And you'd put on a record, turn it up as loud as it'd go, because drums are loud. It's got to be loud so you can hear yourself over it. That was back before we had headphones. And we'd play all day. And I got pretty good. I got pretty good. And then about 16, I got that pretty 55 Chevy.
Yeah.
And my now wife, then something special that came into play, and drums just fell by the wayside.
They did. Now, going through high school, did you do any acting or anything like that?
No,
No?
but I was in the school band,
Mm-hmm.
I think 7th and 8th grade,
Okay.
and maybe in the 9th grade. Played trombone. I wanted to play drums because I already knew how to play drums, but the band director probably needed a horn section, so
Trombone.
yep, he said, "Are you playing a trombone?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Dang it!
Mm-hmm.
I got drums at home, man. I could bring them.
I can practice.
I can bring my own stuff."
Yeah.
No, played trombone.
And I don't want to blow by this 55 Chevy. We saw a picture of it at lunch today. It's a beautiful car. It's got, I started asking questions. Let me do it. Let me do it again if I can. So, jacked up in the back end. Do you have air shocks on it?
Sure, had to. It was the 70s.
It was the 1970s. So, speaking of which, were you running 60s on the back? Were you running 70s on the back?
I went all in. 50s.
50s.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And air shocks were tall enough so that thing didn't rub, the fenders didn't rub them tires?
No, I actually had to put a set of extensions on the air shocks and then pump them up as hard as they'd go.
Yeah. How'd that drive?
Like harder than a log wagon, maybe like Fred Flintstone car.
Yeah.
But man, it was tough. You'd go across the railroad tracks and it would just knock the breath out of you. Just boom.
Very fast car because it was 327 with the 4-speed.
4-speed with, I think it had 373 rear. I know it wasn't 411. It would have been too difficult then, but it was like.
So you could light them up,
Oh,
could you?
man, light them up in just about every gear.
Now-
Yeah. I scared a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I used to take it. If you've ever seen American Graffiti,
Yeah.
well, we had a street in Memphis called Summer Avenue that's just where the hot cars hung out. So I'd go down there and we'd race stoplight to stoplight for, I mean, no money. It's just for bragging rights.
Right.
And, man, I love to beat up on, like, this rich kid with his dad's Camaro.
Yeah.
Because the 4-speed and those gears, I would just jump out there real quick and then just shut it down.
Yeah.
Because if I stayed in it, he'd be coming around.
Yeah.
So I would just embarrass him really bad.
And
then
you say, I win.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's the race, boys. That's it. That's all we're doing. So, man, I was one to look for.
Yeah.
But I remember one night I found out something I'd never seen before. I saw nitrous oxide
Oh.
for the first time.
Oh.
Yeah. I pulled up the stoplight and there was a Chevy 2 Nova.
Little Nova.
Yeah, a little Nova.
Yeah.
It was ugly.
Yeah.
It had some primer spots on it.
Yeah.
And kind of a little homemade hood scoop. So I thought this is going to be easy pickings.
Yeah.
So light turned green. I did my same deal. Blew out there about a car length.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I heard his engine changed pitch.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Like that. And he was gone.
Yeah,
And I could actually feel my jaw hit my chest.
Oh, wow.
It was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Well, found out later, nitrous oxide.
Nitrous oxide.
All he did was hit that button.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
that was the first time I got burned.
You got burned. So you never did any quarter miles or anything like that?
No.
Never got out? Because how are you going to control that car with that kind of rear end
Yeah.
and that kind of
You're not.
that suspension or lack thereof suspension because
Exactly.
she's so hard?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took it around a curve one time a little too fast, and it would just swap ends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's a pretty heavy car, too.
it was a heavy car, but had a great sounding 8-track. Big old back seat, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
For days. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I got rid of that, and I bought this was 70s Fuel Crunch was just coming in.
Okay. 72, 73.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I bought a used, I think it was a 71 Oldsmobile 442
Oh,
Cutlass.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
455.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned later why I got it so cheap,
Yeah.
because it drank fuel, man.
Oh, yeah,
It cost me a fortune.
Yeah. Yeah.
But man, that thing was torquey. Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. Quite a
Beautiful
car.
too. It was black with gold, the 2 gold stripes coming up the hood.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Of course, first thing I did, big tires.
Modify.
Oh yeah.
Got to add them on. Air
Yeah.
shocks.
No, I didn't put air shocks.
No,
on that one.
didn't put air shocks
no.
on.
It was.
Okay.
We were getting into this. That was a little later in '70s,
Okay.
so I
Didn't
stayed.
need to jack them up anymore.
No.
Well, when he talks about these air shocks, and I know nothing about vehicles, but I do know of all you old farmers and ranchers out there, when he's talking how this thing rode, just picture your old 73-quarter ton Dodge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is it,
Yeah.
because that thing
Yeah.
would jar you
Unloaded.
to piece. Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Yeah. When it sat there and you went over railroad tracks with them things, oh,
It would knock the breath out of
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Good times,
Oh,
man.
good times.
Good times.
So you come up with your music. You head out on the road then with your pop.
Right.
When was that? Where was that?
Well, I started traveling with him, and to mostly the Harper Morgan rodeos, and I was just doing the other end of his acts, and I found myself when I wasn't doing his act in the announcer stand, messing around with the sound system, starting to play all the event music, and back then we used they looked like 8-track tapes. They were the same kind of carts that disc jockeys used in radio stations for like commercials and stuff
Yep.
like that,
Yep.
and probably had songs on them, I suppose. But it had a unique feature. They had like automatic stops on them. Like you could say like the first part, or say like if you were doing a bareback riding, you'd have like 6 bareback rides on there, and after the first ride, it would stop automatically and queue itself up for the next one.
Okay.
So it was, but that was the first way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then every time I'd go to the rodeo, I'd end up doing more stuff.
Mhm.
And finally, Mr. Harper gave me a job doing it. So then I was making some money from Dad doing his acts, and I was doing the sound too. So that meant when we go into building rodeos, I would call all the lighting.
Okay.
So, and then it just kind of evolved. We would come up with an opening. See, Harper and Morgan, we were known for our big, elaborate openings to rodeo.
Okay.
I mean, they were big, complex. They were a production in and itself. So, I mean, I even ended up selecting all the music, helping edit it down, doing stuff like that. So I just picked up a knack for that kind of stuff. And when I was young and I'd go to a party, I would always end up at the sound system. And next thing I was running the show. Well, this is what I want to play now. The crowd's getting here. I want to pick them up a little bit, play this. I'll just bring them down a little bit. We need a dance song, and we need something hard or whatever. So that's the reason why I went into communications. I wanted to be in radio,
Okay.
but I'm glad I didn't, because it's nothing like it used to be. All your stuff comes, here's the format, here's what you're going to play.
Yep.
All you got to do is push buttons.
Right. Record.
I didn't want to do that. I mean, back in the 70s when we had some great stations around here, around Memphis, and we would have like new music hour, stuff that you've never heard before. It was just a great time to be alive for music. Just a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's kind of where, and I'm the same way to this day. If I hear something good, and I've got a little playlist on my computer at work, and I'm always wanting to say, hey man, listen to this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you'd like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love when I turn somebody on to something that I think it's good, or when they play me something that I've never heard of. I don't know. Music's always just been a really important part of my life.
So what's on your current playlist?
Oh gosh, it goes from I really like the Electric Light Orchestra.
ELO.
I love ELO.
Okay.
But I mean, you got to be in a certain mood for ELO. It's a little laid back, but it's complex. And that's what I like about it. Let's see. There's a band called Little Feat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I'm
Yeah.
a Little Feat fan.
You are?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
There's, and then I even get into some 80s stuff. There's a band called, anyway, the name of the song is called Something About You, something like Level 42 or something. But listen to it sometime.
Okay.
I think you'll like it.
Okay. I will check.
I'm listening to a lot now is Loggins and Messina.
Oh, wow.
There's a song called,
Angry Eyes.
it's on my playlist.
Okay.
Let's see. There's just a lot of stuff. I do have a lot of ELO on there, though. I like the album that they put out the year I graduated. It's called Out of the Blue. I think it's one of their best albums.
Okay. Well, when I think back to the era that you graduated, that's the same era that I exactly the same year. What about the Eagles?
Eagles, like the Eagles.
Yeah.
I like the Eagles.
Yeah.
I think Joe Walsh's contribution to the Eagles is always overlooked.
Yeah.
Because you go back to the days with the James Gang and Funk 49,
Yeah.
that song.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with Joe Walsh and you listen to the Eagles, you can go, oh, okay, I hear Joe.
Yeah.
I like a lot of Steely Dan.
Okay.
Steely Dan when they first started, they had a guitar player named Skunk Baxter. And man, what a guitar player.
Yeah.
What a guitar player.
Oh, wow. And I remember in that era, my cousin Daryl, he shows up with Meatloaf.
Oh, yeah. Bat Out of Hell. Where'd that come from?
Where'd that come from? Right?
I know.
Still classic today. Nobody's ever done anything like it.
I know. And not a good voice.
No?
Surely not good looking.
No.
But it's a classic.
Yeah. And in that era, you started to travel with Pop,
Right.
and you went out on your own a little bit,
Yeah.
and you did it for 17 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Main mode of income.
I know.
So talk a little bit about that, because you're a barrel man.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't have made it just on my own. Dad was paying me to help him, and
Yeah.
I was picking up a little bit of the Wrangler bullfight money
By packing the barrel.
by packing the barrel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was mine to keep on my own.
It was.
So
No split up on that.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But it was pretty good. You're gone a lot, but when you're at home, you're home for a nice little stretch. Like I built my shop at home because sometimes you would have 2 weeks. I got to go on some of my daughter's basketball trips where
Yeah.
other dads, they were working.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I missed a lot of birthdays.
Yeah.
And missed some anniversaries and missed some recitals, and because I'm booked to be gone that week.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I hate I did that to my wife, and I hope she understands, but it's done now. I can't-
Yeah.
I had to just make the best of it.
And the thing about it was you were booking how far in advance?
Oh gosh, sometimes a year in advance.
Yeah.
I knew Dad would give me a schedule pretty far in advance.
Yeah.
Pretty much a year. Well, he was so popular and sought after that when he went to Vegas at the finals, he had pretty much his whole year already in the books.
Yeah.
He might go there to fill 1 or 2 dates,
Okay.
but mostly he just went there because he needed to be there.
Yeah.
The
You know.
business end of it.
The business end of it.
Right.
Exactly.
You got to say hello to the people that
Yes.
are paying you.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
a huge part of the business.
He didn't. Man, he hated going out there.
Yeah.
He hated it.
And the reason I bring up booking a year in advance, it's not like you can on a given weekend go, I don't feel like going.
Yeah.
Well, we got this recital, we got this ball game, we got this whatever.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that.
Yeah.
You pack it up and go.
I remember the only rodeo that I remember that I missed was Birmingham, Alabama. And I got the flu, and I was so sick that I couldn't raise my head. I'd never been that sick before. And there was just no way I could have made it. And that's the only one ever that I think I missed. I remember we went to Hillsboro, Oregon, right outside of Portland. Anyway, we had a Wrangler bullfight there. And I'm thinking Lawrence Borba had his bulls, and they were some hot Mexicans. They were hot. And I remember Lloyd Ketchum, it was his turn, and one of them got the barrel away from him and just started end over ending me across the arena. Well, it landed like top first on the ground.
So you're upside down.
So I'm upside down, and then it teetered over. So I'm all the way to the open end.
Wow.
And I kind of gather my wits and look out, and here he comes. And the only thing I could do, I had time to turn my head, but he got his head in there with me and broke like 3 ribs on one side and pushed my rib cage over and tore a bunch of ligaments on the other. I mean, it jacked me up. Well, they rolled me out of the arena and just poured me out pretty much. And I think I passed out once. And anyway, the doctor there gave me something that was the best medicine I ever had. Because I felt like somebody had the bed sideways and was trying to pour me in the floor all night. It was crazy. But I couldn't sleep in the bed. I had to sit in a chair.
Yeah.
So we finished that up, and I worked the rodeo, but I didn't work the bullfights. So
no, wait a minute. Broken ribs, dislocated ribs.
Yeah.
They got you kind of back in position.
Right.
There's no way to heal ribs except time.
Oh, I know.
Right?
I know.
Did they even give you like a rib belt at the time? I know there's a thing about, right, pneumonia and all that.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I didn't have anything.
But you went back into the arena just not fighting bulls.
Yeah, I didn't. What I did during the bullfights, I got somebody to put some, like, couple sacks of feed inside the barrel so I'd give it some weight. But I worked the bull riding and I worked Dad's act. I can't remember what act it was.
Yeah.
But it was hard. It was tough.
Yeah.
And I remember we left there and had to go to Colorado Springs for Pikes Peak. And you had to be there. I mean, that's what it was. You had to be there. So I'll never forget driving over, and I'd taken something that kind of eased the pain, and I kind of forgot about it, just driving along. And we had to drive all night to get there for Colorado Springs, and the sun was coming up. And, you know, when you get the sun in your eyes, it makes you sneeze.
Yeah. Oh, my. Oh, my.
I was driving down the road. Dad was asleep in the back. And like I said, I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I took that big breath before you sneeze.
Oh, no.
And I realized then,
no.
I almost passed out.
I was going to say, did you black out?
I think I blacked out for a second.
My goodness.
But I didn't run off the road.
Yeah.
And then I had to work Pikes Peak that next week. That was rough. And I remember a guy there with the committee. He was a policeman or something. And he gave me a bulletproof vest. And I pulled it real tight.
Yeah. And that kind of supported?
It kind of supported. It helped it a little bit.
Okay. And at this time, you're traveling, all your travel is 100% by car?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're not flying.
Man, I remember we flew to Calgary, and I had to ship my barrel, and I had to pay import tax on it, and then turn around and pay export tax on it.
Yeah.
It cost me more to ship that barrel up there than the barrel cost.
Right.
So, no, we did 99% of our travel was car.
And
truck.
always pull an axe? Did you always have trailers behind?
No, not always.
No.
No. In the later years, the bigger acts we got, we'd pull a trailer. And it kind of gave you a place to change if it was an outdoor rodeo.
Yeah.
So, but not always. I remember we had a little. Do you remember the little Astro vans,
Sure.
Chevrolet?
Sure.
We had one of those, and we could put the robot in it, the Golf Act or whatever.
They took up room, though. I mean, some
Oh,
of these
yeah.
acts, like the Piano Act.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we got it in there some way.
You did. But you're always only ever hauling one big act,
Yes.
and you're not hauling a mule at this time.
No.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard the story about Dad, and he used to have there was two mules I remember. One was Toby, and one was Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea was the one he had the longest. Well, he was down, I don't know, down somewhere South Georgia, ended the rodeo, was driving back up to somewhere in Alabama, and needed to get gas. And he was hauling the mule back then. So, middle of the night, probably early morning, pulls in this gas station. Back then, the attendant came out and putting gas, and he said, "What you got in that trailer back there?" Dad said, "Oh, I got a little mule." And he goes back there and looks at it and says, "Well, it must be pretty little. I don't see one." And Dad said, "Oh, she's in there. Just."
Yeah.
He said, "Won't you come show me how little this mule is?" So Dad walks back there. Sweet Pea's not there.
Oh, not in the trailer.
No, he
Oh.
he left her tied up. So he has to drive all the way back and load the mule up, turn around and go back. And he said, sure enough, just about the time he gets to that service station, he's needing gas again.
Gas again. Yeah.
So he pulls in there, and the same guy comes out. He said, "Hey, fella, come here. I got a mule I want to show you."
Oh my goodness! Can you imagine? That's a traveling story.
Let's see. We were in Crossett, Arkansas,
Yeah.
and we were headed the next day overnight somewhere in Kansas, I think.
Yeah.
And we're probably, I don't know, 25, 30, maybe 50 miles, probably about 50 miles from where we're going, and I'm driving.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, man, I break out in a sweat. It's like, did I put my barrel in there? And then I'm thinking, I don't think I did. And then I think, which is going to be worse, me telling him now or me telling him when we get there that I left my barrel and we got to turn around and go back and get it? So I said, "Dad, I got to check something in the back." He said, "All right." So we pull over, open the door. It's not back there.
Oh no.
Man, I hate to walk around. I almost thought about just running off in the woods. You know, just,
Yeah. How old would you have been then?
oh man, I was probably in my 30s or 40s still.
Oh, okay.
My dad was a bad dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to be the guy trying to get over the fence.
No, grab my foot.
Yeah, that was
grab my
horrible.
foot. Oh my goodness. So, yeah,
I had to
turn
drive
around
all
and
the way
go
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we pull up, they're breaking the arena down. People still there. I'm going, "Dang, I left my barrel."
Yeah. Yeah.
They're laughing. I load it up and get out of there.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So 17 years you're in the arena, going hard. When did you decide enough's enough?
Well, the big acts started kind of going away. What people wanted, what people were wanting most then were walk and talk,
Yeah.
fill the hole.
Yeah.
We'll hire a specialty act for a big act,
I see.
but what we need is somebody that can fill those holes. And he was so good at it. That's what they started wanting. And I'd had enough. Living on the road is hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Hotels, finding places to eat.
A lot of all night driving.
Oh gosh,
Being
I
away
remember-
from family.
yeah,
away from
I know
family.
that was the main thing.
Because you had kids.
Yeah, and my wife really deserved me to come on.
Yeah.
Whether
Be
she
home.
wanted it or not, she deserved it, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I hear you. They want it, and you want to be there, but there's such conflict,
Yeah.
and it causes such conflict.
Well,
I
it's your
know.
business, right? It's
Yeah,
your,
it's
this
your
isn't like I'm
livelihood.
playing. I'm making money. This is how I'm paying my bills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I tried to take them on a, because she's seen Yellowstone a couple times. She's seen the Grand Tetons. She's seen the Pacific Ocean. She's seen the Grand Canyon. She says every time I bring up the Grand Canyon, she said, "Yeah, it's just like family vacation," and it was, because I had planned. I was headed back home, and I had planned maybe a half day there or something. Well, on our way up to the Grand Canyon, they're doing road construction, and it's a single lane road. So everybody stopped. I mean, for hours. There's tour buses. People are outside picnicking and playing frisbee and stuff. So by the time we got there, I mean, we had maybe 30 minutes before it got dark. And it really was. She kind of got up to the rim and go, okay, it's time to go. She never let me forget that.
Okay. So you came off in 2000 and...
I say probably 2010.
2010. Cold turkey?
Yes.
Done.
Yes. Yep. No, I did go back and work Dad's rodeos just for him right here.
Okay.
So, I mean, got to stay at home, drive down there, do the gig, and come back.
So, as you were talking about Longhorn, this is what I'm coming back to.
Yeah.
As you're talking about Longhorn, making good money, beautiful shows, all the pageantry, just knock them out.
Yes.
Why'd your pop decide to make the move to the RCA?
Because Bruce Lurkey was, I wouldn't say he was a control freak, but he came up with a stipulation that anything, any joke, any comment said in the arena has to go through him first to be approved. And Dad said, Bruce, I can't live with that. And Bruce said, well, take the contract, go home, think about it. Well, he started booking rodeos. That's how much he thought about it.
And had something led up to that? Had there been...
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. If it did, I wasn't aware of it. Bruce just wanted to keep it clean, knowing exactly what's going to happen. And I can't say as I blame him. I don't know if I'd have went that far, but, you know, he wanted control. He didn't want any problems. No controversy. I mean, it could have been something in the news. You know, I don't know.
And being a contractor, I understand that point.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know,
I could too.
There's enough controversy from things that you don't know of. The people you're paying, you want to make sure that nothing's going to come from there.
Right.
And I get it. I wouldn't have went to that extent because knowing the perfectionist your father was, he might say a little something that's a little off the cuff, but I'm sure if he's at Bruce's thing, it's not going to get too bad.
Right.
But I get it because they're putting on rodeos is such a stressful scenario. And you know because you're doing one. Your daughter's getting, she got so many hats to wear. You know, you got the opening, you got the contestants, you got the announcer, you got the clowns, you got the pickup
sponsors.
And something gets overlooked.
I know.
It's on you.
Yeah, that's all she needs. Somebody to say something to say the wrong thing.
Absolutely. I get that.
Yeah, I do too.
I do. And he had to kind of reinvent himself. He had to go out. I mean, talk about moving out into unknown territory.
Yeah.
Probably was pretty well known, but not known in those places,
exactly.
Right? Yep. And do you remember, was that kind of a step back for a bit to get shows until he got a rolling?
I don't remember it being a big step back, but I remember his determination. And this is a test, and I'm gonna meet it head on. I remember that determination, and it was probably a little bit of fear too.
Oh, I imagine. That's how he's paying the bills.
Yeah.
It is his livelihood, and having to make a decision like that.
I know.
And sticking with his principles, could have said to Bruce, okay, here's my jokes, here's my lines,
Right.
please approve whatever,
Right.
and I'll play within the rules.
Yeah. That wouldn't have lasted.
Yeah. I mean, he had the creativity he needed. He
Needed
needed
some space.
creativity
Needed
and
that
space.
little bit of space.
Yeah. And that makes sense. You know, the other day, yesterday actually, we were at the Bellis's and they started showing us pictures. And the one picture that they showed us that they're very proud of was a picture taken in Colorado Springs at the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I remember when I found out about that. I was floored, and I think there's a Dale Knobs. I think he's a chiropractor from Colorado Springs. I think he had a lot to do with his nomination. Dale's a great guy, got a great practice, and I don't know. I'm thinking that he helped push that.
But that was a surprise.
Yes, it was. And I was very proud to go out there and see him accept it. It was, I mean, you kind of reached the top.
Yeah, it is the top.
Yeah.
Put a
Do you,
phone.
do you remember anything from his speech that stood out for
Not really. Not really. I think he mentioned my name, and because it was hot. Sun. I remember it being hot, and the sun was bearing down on me.
you? Yeah.
But it was. I mean, it was a very proud moment to see all those people that I have a lot of admiration for.
Yeah.
It was great.
And what I love about it, he was there to see it.
Yeah.
It's so disappointing when
Yeah.
they do somebody's passed away
Yeah.
and they get in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
You know, just in my mind, it's disappointing.
Yeah. To be
you
able
know.
to be there and celebrate and acknowledge it. and-
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
great
huge.
point.
I know.
A couple years ago, I was out there. Went to Colorado Springs. We were out there on some business and had an opportunity to go to the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And something about walking through the hall, and there he is on display. And I'm like, I know him. I've talked to him.
Yeah.
Very special moment. And to see him there, so well deserved. And yeah, thank you for sharing the move. You know, I'd always been curious. Leaving the IPRA, which he was the president of for a number of years, that
Right.
had to be a big decision in his life.
Yeah. It was tough.
Yeah,
Not only financially, but just the pride that he had for the IRA.
yeah,
And he felt like, part of him felt like, well, I'm leaving it. Yeah. But had to do what he had to do.
had to do what he had to do. That's for sure. So, if you wouldn't mind, if you want, talk a little bit about his final rodeo.
The Dixie National, biggest rodeo east of the Mississippi. State he was born in. He was born in Mississippi. He thought a lot of that rodeo and had so many friends down there. Worked so hard. And for him to go out that way, finish the last performance, go back to the hotel, and pass away peacefully in your sleep. I can't think of a better ending. It was tough getting that phone call from Scotty Lovelace that next morning. And he just said that, I don't know for sure, but Lecile was supposed to meet me for breakfast or call me or something. And he said he's never late. And I'm having Jason Spell go down and take a look, see what he can find out what's going on at the hotel. And I was just on pins and needles. And he calls back and said, Maddie's gone. It was pretty tough. But I should be so lucky to go that way.
And right here shows the respect.
Yeah. Well, that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
It's been a pleasure.
So, advice to, I know you talked about slowing it down. You spent 17 years on the road. You spent 17 years in the barrel. You watched your father through all those years, through the behind the chutes, if you will, beyond the chutes. Advice to some of these performers going up and down the road or wannabe.
Gosh. Just put your whole heart into it. Just give it all you've got. Every minute. Because the crowd deserves it.
Yeah.
Don't go out there just try to get by. That's the difference between the great ones and the all right ones. And he was definitely a great one.
Perfect. To our listeners, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of our podcast with Barrowman Matt Harris. If you do, please share it with your friends. Word of mouth is always the best advertising. As Matt just said, we're here to entertain. We want to make sure that these episodes get out to where those that deserve to hear these stories get to hear them. To make your listening easier, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Search for Beyond the Chutes and follow us, like us, rate us, give us comments, let us hear from you. If you like reels, we got them. Check us out on BTC, Beyond the Chutes, our Facebook page, and click follow. And thank you to Parasite Systems for their support with our podcast. And to keep your horses in top condition, the miles you are driving, they are riding, you need to get them tested so you can find out exactly what it is they need to become healthy. You can find these test kits at parasitesystems.com. And we got a coupon code for you, BTC023, 50% off for your test kits. And we want to say a big thank you to the IRA Project Facebook group for all their help and their guidance. This is Beyond the Chutes with
Matt Harris
and
Sam Swearingen.
Until next time, this is Doug Simcox. Thank you for listening.